Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at a very strange underground comic called The Human Drama. This is an anthology from 1978, published by the Print Mint, and it has all these really great underground cartoonists doing really good work, artwork, but the stories are all very weird. It's almost as if everyone decided for this comic to write stories that like have an interesting premise, they're well written until the ending, and then the ending totally fizzles out. Almost every story in this does that. It's very odd that one anthology would have that characteristic to all the stories. The editor is this guy named Jim Maddow, who also writes two of the stories in here. But I don't know if maybe he influenced the other writers, specifically asked them to write a certain kind of story. I couldn't find anything about Jim Maddow, so I don't know his raison d'etre. But just very odd comic, but such good art. There's some amazing shit in here. So it's definitely worth keeping. And it's weird, the stories, even though they all fizzle out, they all have like interesting plots and characters. And then they just end up like a fart in the bathtub. But look at this. We start off beautiful Spain Rodriguez cover. And even the cover is just like, what? It's beautifully drawn, but I don't know what it means. I really like this inside front cover by Mark Fisher. And Mark Fisher did quite a few undergrounds. But I just love all these little tiny panels. Though I've looked at this, it's completely wordless. I've looked at this like 5 times, and I really can't tell what's going on. Some kind of import-export, contraband. People are fighting over some contraband. I don't know. But it's beautiful art. And really, I just love the panels in this. So the first story is by Spain Rodriguez. And this is like a non-story. This guy hits on this woman walking into a bar. She totally blows him off. She walks up to this cowboy guy, this lanky cowboy. And she's totally into him. She's totally flirting with him, really, obviously. And he tells her that his name's Bimbo Johnny, the scourge of southern Kansas. Venmo Johnny, they glued him to a tree, but he wouldn't talk. They tied up his ears, but he still wouldn't sell no veggies. So no vegetables. Like hell I will, and he's kicking over these vegetables. And then she says, well, nice meeting you, cowboy. And he says, good night. And that's it. And, but man, look at this amazing art. This crazy tree he draws. It's just nonsensical. But until the ending that's not really an ending, it's intriguing. You're like, oh, what's up with this Bimbo Johnny guy? And it's interesting to read until you get to the end. You're like, what? That's it? So here we have a comic by Leslie Carbaja. Probably best known for like revitalizing Betty Boop and drawing some Betty Boop comics in the 80s. So we're in Schenectady. This old guy's watching the football game, and he's got to go take a piss. And he's thinking, those football jocks, all the fame, glory, money, and the woman. And I've never even thought of doing this in my life. This might be a thing that old timers do, but he spits and hits his piss stream. And all of a sudden he has this fantasy. Good afternoon and welcome to the Spit and Hit World Championship. live from the toilet bowl. It's this giant stadium in the shape of a toilet. And basically in this fantasy, spit and hit is like the biggest sport in the world. And of course, he is the champion. And he's famous and rich. And then he returns to reality, finishes peeing, and runs back to catch the last play in the football game. And the narrator says, "That away, Willie. Finish that six-pack. You need all the practice you can get." So that one actually has an ending. It's a little punchline, weird gag. Excuse me. I need some water. Kind of weird art. It's funny. This is probably like the best story in the book and the worst art. This is quite beautiful, actually, and this is very strange. This is Alan Weiss, a mainstream comic artist. He, by this point, he had already been in mainstream comics for quite a few years. And this is the best thing I've ever seen him draw. This cartooning is amazing. And so it's weird that he's in this underground. So this grandpa is telling his little grandson, recounting a story about when he was a little kid. And this stranger came into town, and strangers weren't treated very well at this town. So the sheriff lets him in. He just says, because the guy says, "I just want to get a hot bath and a hot meal. There won't be any trouble." So it seems like he's a big hit in the bar. He's telling jokes, everyone's laughing. But then someone says, "There's trouble over at the Contral place." And he runs over there. And there's a big mob outside. So I think someone's got the Contral's daughter hostage. And they hear gunshots. And they fear for the worst. But no, it's that stranger. He snuck in the house and killed the kidnapper. And saves the daughter. And like, not only these stories have like weird endings, they also have just weird non sequiturs where you feel like you missed a page. Like after all this hubbub, the father is talking to the daughter and she says, "New York? Daddy, do you really mean it?" And that's it. There was no talk of New York previous. We don't know what she's talking about. We won't find out what she's talking about. So he refuses the reward money that Contral tries to push on him. And he slaps the little kid on the butt and says, "Behave yourself, kid." And off he rides. "I knew him like a brother, but I never knew his name. That's the sign of a man." And that's the end of the story. Oh man, this has got to be Jim Maddow. Because all these underground cartoonists usually don't even tell stories like this. So I'm pretty sure he probably wrote these stories. Or at least the plot outlines. And got these guys to draw them. Because it's just... nobody constructs stories like this. At least in my experience. But man, this is some really nice cartooning. So now we got a comic by Roger Brand, the classic underground cartoonist. Okay, here's a clue. It says "Pictures by R. Brand." It doesn't say, created by. So maybe these are written by this guy, Jim Maddow. So we see this guy at this diner. He seems like a nice guy. Gives the kid a quarter so he can play some tunes. And the guy who works there is like, "That's pretty nice of you." And he says, "Well, I got to try to make up for a terrible childhood. His dad used to beat the crap out of him. His mother was the neighborhood tramp. She would even sleep with his friends in high school." And he says, makes you wonder about those kids with a good home life turning sour. Then you look at my background. You know, I totally turned out like a normal family guy. Good job, happy life. I guess it's just like leaving a light on for a banana, which I guess is some old expression. You never know. Once again, what the fuck? And all these random people torturing these bananas, anthropomorphized bananas with faces on them. They're squeezing them and crushing them. Old ladies, young men, young women. I don't know where these people came from. Why they're torturing these bananas. Ah. But I guess, you know, it's not predictable, that's for sure. These comics, you know, it could be worse. It could just be totally predictable, typical, like, comics. But, man, this guy's a weirdo. So now we got Greg Irons. And we see this guy in the woods. He's hunting. And there's a pay telephone all the way out in the woods. And he picks it up. His name's Mr. Harlan Davis. And the voice on the other line, on the end of the line, says, "We found your wife." And now we see his story. When Harlan Smith was a young man, he was really rich, really successful with the ladies, and just a total cunt. He was a piece of shit. And just completely into himself. But he met this woman, Clarissa. And she wasn't the greatest looker, but there were other considerations. She's this scion of, I don't know if that word works for females. Can you be a female scion? Whatever she is, she's the heiress to a huge fortune. And as soon as he marries her, his true nature becomes apparent. He slaps her around. He's a complete shit to her. And when she leaves him, she just says, you know, you can keep the money. I'll be out of your life forever. She actually says, I want now what I've always wanted, for you to be happy. So she still loves him in some sick way. So, you know, he's got all this money. He continues to earn more money. He experiences life to its fullest. You know, he always has these young gold diggers. And, you know, he knows their game. Save it, honey. I know your game. I invented it. So he's very lonely in his old age. He realizes she was his reason to live. And so the old man realizes what a fool he's been. And he says, I know I don't deserve a second chance, but... And he asked the guy on the phone, he says, is my wife she's still alive? And the guy says, just barely. Get here in 10 minutes. She wants to talk to you. I don't know what for. He says, listen, I'm going to foot in the bill for this phone call. If you're interested, call back. Here's the number. So he looks at his pocket. He realizes all he has is like $50 bills. He's got no change. So he goes back out looking for someone. And he sees a lone hiker. Looks like some hippie dude. And he says, please give me some change. I'll give you a $50 bill for the change in your pocket. And the guy says, you're nuts. There's no phone booth around for 10 miles. And then we see him like at a hearing. All of a sudden it jumps to, you know, in the future. He's at a televised hearing where he admits what he did. He said, I had no choice. So he shoots the guy. Since the guy wouldn't give him change, he's going to take it. He gets the change. And he calls back. Clarissa's already dead. And somehow the police are already onto him. He's in the middle of nowhere and he shot this guy. And these police helicopters. And they're like, we're coming in to get you. And on the phone, we hear the guy who just told him that Clarissa died. But he tells Harlan that she told me to tell you to go fuck yourself. Oy vey. Such a stupid story. And the thing is, it's kind of intriguing. It's like, oh, he's going to get back to her. You know, this is like classic things of drama. And then he just does this crazy end. I got to find more about this Jim Maddow guy. I hate to say it. I want to read hundreds of stories by him just to see how bad they are. It's incredibly bad. It's almost like that old Saturday Night Live sketch. Incredibly bad comic writing. It's almost fascinating. So here we have another beautiful Spain Rodriguez piece. This is just lush. This is some gorgeous shit. And there's this guy, and he's on this quest to find Alhambra. It says it's 1,000 years have passed. I don't know if that's just being just poetic license. I can't remember if he's supposed to be eternal or not. I don't think he is. And we see him as a young man. I assume his wife or lover is saying, "You have everything." And here's the siren call that he must find Alhambra. So he leaves all of his, wealth and happiness. A pity that he'll never know. He'll never know. He is Alhambra. What? I don't know. No, there is no knowing. It doesn't even build up. Why? It's not even an interesting, metaphor. It's just ridiculous. Okay, we got Roger Brand again. And this story is very complex and stupid. It's really dumb. So we see these I think they're mobster types, and they're gambling. And their female assistant comes in. She says, "Hey, there's 2 gorillas outside looking for Solly. Solly's the boss." And she says something about how, "I know their 2 faces. When they push me, I know these men." And Solly says, "Don't worry about it, honey." And they shoot the guns, and it's water. It's a water rifle. Turns out it's this guy Benji, who's a big joker. But the 2 guys with Benji, his 2 goons with the water pistols, she freaks out. She's like, "You murderers." And these guys are like, "What a daffy broad." So Benji is basically came to convince these guys to go on some kind of little journey. Which, they are like, this is like a wild goose chase. Where's Benji taking us? And we see Benji's eyes light up here right before we cut away. And it seems like there's this bright light. Later on, we see 2 state troopers. They see the car. The cop almost vomits because there's 4 guys in the front seat. They're burnt beyond belief. They hear a sound in the trunk. It's that woman. And she tells them this complex, ornate story about how she was blind as a little girl. Her father was a tyrant. Her mother was the most wonderful mother in the world. One day she was out smelling flowers. And these 2 men grabbed hold of her. And the ones that she was sure that those 2 guys who pushed her in that gambling room are the same guys for some reason. Like, even if it made sense, it's not even an interesting plot point. It's ludicrous. So they have her in jail because, she's part of this murder investigation. This reporter comes to visit her out of the blue. And then that guy Benji shows up. The desk sergeant says, "Hey, that guy Benjamin's just arrived." And Benji comes in. And he says that he was feeling evil thoughts about his friends, the fellas. And these 2 guys just appeared and offered their services. And they left a letter for the young lady. Benji hands the letter over, and it's some kind of poetic nonsense. And he says, Benji, I want detailed descriptions of these two goons. I want to put out an APB. And the reporter seems to be omniscient all of a sudden. He's like, I'm afraid you're wasting your time, Inspector. You'll never find them. Like, what the fuck does he know? Sorry, I'm getting angry by this comic. This guy Jim Maddow is such a fucking moron. And the woman asked Benji, she says, Benji, those guys were your friends. I don't understand. And he says, all my life, I was always the little man. The little man, all my life. So I guess these two goons are like these angels of vengeance that if you hate someone, they'll appear and offer their services, even if it's an idle notion. Like he didn't really want his friends to die, but he was just pissed off at them one day. And it sounds like she wanted her father to die, but not her mother. So it just doesn't make any sense, no matter what angle you look at it. Oh, here we get another beautiful Greg Irons one. And this is like California during Spanish rule. Look at that beautiful tree. That's nice. So this Caballero guy is asking a priest that, is it true that your entire life passes before you when you die? Do you think there's any truth to that, Father? And he says, I don't know about that, but you should look to the future. You're the life to come. Because this guy's in jail. He's about to be hanged. So now we have a flashback to see how Vargo got there. That's his name, Vargo. And apparently Vargo is very, very popular with the senoritas. He's head honcho with the ladies, as Ween would say. And he has this pattern where it's almost like he wants to get caught by these rich guys. He always has sex with these rich, gentlemen. And then they duel, and he's really good at fighting, and he kills them. So technically he's breaking no laws. But the people in power want him stopped. The people like the average Joes or average Jose's in California, they all love him. He's almost like a folk hero. And all of a sudden, he's ranting about how he wants the ultimate pleasure. I must have it. Only then will I be fulfilled. And this guy tells him there's a gypsy lady down the road who might help him. And she says, the ultimate pleasure is not an entity unto itself. It's an accumulation. So at the moment of your death, your life will pass before you. If your life has been filled with pleasure, then of course your moment of death will be this amazing accumulation of all those pleasures. But if you keep living, then as you get older, your pleasures are going to end and your sorrows will begin. So then at the end of your life, it won't be so amazing. So Vargo makes a decision in his mind on the way back to town. I would have really liked to see Greg Irons draw some westerns. This looks pretty good to me. It continues on the back cover. And it is odd. It's like they forgot to color the first 3 panels except for the blood. Maybe it's for dramatic effect, but I don't know. I see no reason why. So he goes to the captain of police, basically, and kills him in front of everyone. He wants to get caught because he wants to die so he can have that accumulation of pleasure at his peak. Because his life has just been like fucking and fighting and fun and pretty pleasurable. I'm so sorry about this. I got a frog in my throat. Oh. So he's got this big, goofy grin on his face when they're about to hang him. And he says, if you think I'm a fool, senor, you are mistaken. Crazy, perhaps, but not a fool. And that's the end of the story. Almost as if there was supposed to be another page and they ran out of room. It almost implies that they ran out of room because they had to put it on the back cover. So this is just... But this was pretty intriguing. I actually liked this story a lot up until the non-ending. The art's amazing, and I kind of like the idea of killing yourself just so the moments that flash before you are all good. The whole thing is pretty good, and then it's over. Knowing Jim Maddow, though, he might want it to end like that. Maybe he didn't run out of a page. That guy, he has such a weird storytelling sense. That's the perfect ending for him. Oh, man. I don't know. I wonder if I read this 10 times, if I'd be like, wow, this Jim Maddow's a genius. Nobody tells a story like him. But I don't think so. These are ridiculously stupid stories. I think just a few weeks ago, we looked at a video and an underground cartoonist had this gag strip. I can't remember who it was, but it was basically just like incredibly dumb stories. And they were like almost like non-joke stories, you know? Very uneventful. But these are eventful, and then they just fizzle out to nothing. So I don't know. I find this comic fascinating. I mean, even no matter how bad the writing is, the art's wonderful. I'm keeping it for the cartooning. But I gotta say, it's so bad it's fascinating, this writing. I can't even explain what was going through this guy's head, this writer. So if you guys have any link to Jim Maddow, when I looked him up on the internet, literally all that came up was Rachel Maddow, even though she spells her name differently. He has one D. And I want to find out more about this guy. I'm very intrigued. So I hope you enjoyed this. I gotta say, I kind of enjoyed this in a sick way. And I literally would hunt out another Jim Maddow comic just to see if it's as stupid as this and crazy. But of course, the art's beautiful. So, if you can find it, it's not going to stink up your collection too bad. So I hope you had fun, and I hope you return here to the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.